Everyone looks to the past as the golden times, a place to return to in their dreams. But while the rest of the world looks to the corporations for guidance, the real warriors fight for the soul of the planet. Pilots who believe the way to redemption is forward, down a path of pain and sacrifice. A well-oiled axe and a steady hand will change the tide.
Hawken was a game I always wished I played more of. The game has been in the back of my head for years now. Always there, but just I couldn't do anything about it. Every couple of years or so, I'd boot up the game after it was initially shut down to jump into offline bots to get the smallest morsel of nostalgia. But even that wouldn't last, as the client would eventually just stop working and I wouldn't even be able to get past the main menu. And this flavor of nostalgia is different. Instead of longing for a time I wish I could relive, as I did back then, this instead was a longing for an experience cut too soon. One that I never truly lived in for the full ride, and I was fortunate and unfortunate enough to play Hawken on the tail end of its lifespan. Now that in and of itself wouldn't be too bad, at least I played the game. However, as I mentioned in a previous video, I only had a shitty laptop when my cousin would introduce me to Hawken. So I only experienced the game through a 15 FPS lens. It was terrible, but the game wasn't. Forever I longed to see this game at a suitable FPS, along with the community of pilots that hopped on every day back in its heyday.
Jump control, this is Phantom 1, flight of 3, 50 clicks from IP links. KPS is 2.25, over.
Roger, Phantom 1, proceed to links, then track radio 149 or align to primary JP and sound off.
2 standing by. 3, good to go.
Misfit 2's been hit! Mayday, mayday, Misfit 1 is going down! I repeat, we're going down! Hostile forces have activated multiple Spectre squads! We need to take those hard points! The enemy has activated Spectres at Alpha! The enemy has too many Spectres! We're getting slaughtered out here! Bitch, we're at 50% hull integrity and drop fast! We're almost done for! Bitch, I need those turrets off!
And now it's back! This insane feat was made possible by the people from the Hawken project, a community of Hawken fans and devs so passionate about the game that they brought it back from the dead. They were able to do this by creating their own servers for a specific build of the game through, and I quote from their own website, clean room reverse engineering, injecting our own code into the client and writing our own infrastructure from scratch. I'm not even going to try to pretend I know anything about that, because I don't. But I do know that reverse engineering and easy don't go together in the same sentence. And I gotta say, that truly has to be commended. I can only imagine the amount of blood, sweat, and time that went into this. From what I can tell, they have been at this ever since the game shut down in 2018. Some crazy dedication to bring back a beloved game, but really there isn't any other game like it. Besides maybe Titanfall, there is no other game like Hawken that I know of that does mechs right. Piloting a big hunk of metal scrapped and welded together never felt so good, and hasn't ever since Hawken came out in 2012. No other game has been able to scratch this itch of controlling a war machine that is both big and clunky to use, but have the ability to master the movement down to the point that you are just gliding across the battlefield, dodging every projectile in the game. And the sounds heard is the icing on the cake. Every whip and whir and shroom, the spin up of the D-Vulcans, and the grenade launcher. The big, heavy, lumbering steps your mech makes, just further reminding you that you're in a big, giant tin can on legs. Of course, that is if the HUD didn't already do that for you. Everything just culminates into this blend of fast-paced action and strategic movement that no game has been able to recreate. And here it comes. They just don't make them like they used to. Take, for instance, the turn speed limit. No matter how fast you throw your mouse across your desk, Your mech will only turn so fast, and makes sense. I'm driving a mech around made out of metal, it's pretty heavy, and moving all that mass would be slow. Honestly, when I first found out about this, I was taken aback because up until that point, I never really dealt with a mechanic like it. And I have to mention, this isn't a thing that is revolutionary or anything, but it did add to the game's uniqueness. I'm sure other games had something similar to it. However, I don't really know any off the top of my head. However, the game would provide an answer in the form of the quick turn. So say you have someone peppering you with some back shots. You can shift S and do a quick 180 turn that is way faster than turning manually. This gives the mechs a realistic use for the thrusters other than just for hovering or an equivalent to a sprint. And since we're on the topic of movement, you also got a side dodge to avoid incoming fire, and if you're super cool, juke your opponents out. That's all well and good and nothing relatively new or groundbreaking by today's standards, but it's the way Hawken perfectly blends the limitations presented by some realistic questions about mechs and answers them in a fun way with thrusters. Because who doesn't like thrusters? But what if you wanted to do these maneuvers in the air? Look no further than the myriad of internal components you can put in your mech to further customize your playstyle. If you wanted to do 180 quick turns or dodges in the air, you would have to grab these modules, and every component and module has its better upgraded variants that provide better performance, but at the cost of taking up more space in your mech's limited inventory as you add better components. This doesn't apply to just enhancements to your mech, but also the consumable equipment you can take with you. These are little trinkets that can help aid you get the upper hand on your enemies, and they each take varying amounts of space in your separate equipment inventory, and upgraded versions just add another use of the item, and doesn't necessarily boost its performance like the components do. But to go back, this is where I have my certain gripes with the game's decision of not letting you quick turn or dodge in the air by default, and locking the ability to a component, that of which you sacrifice component slots towards to use. Although it does make sense, the setting and tone of the world of Hawken presents an industrial dystopia where they can't really afford to produce the most high-tech and pristine models of mech with all the bells and whistles to wage war with. So there's a give and take, and it's up to you what you value most in yours, more survivability or more maneuverability. Then again, this compromise is just a will of reason to make matchmaking more balanced. I'd say the movement wouldn't be as special if every mech could just 180 and dodge in the air. Ideally, you'll accrue a garage full of mechs all able to specialize in different environments, and some you might want to sacrifice movement for more passive buffs. Now that I think about it, Hawken was one of the earliest forms of a hero shooter, quote-unquote, as Hawken has an assortment of mechs ranging from light, medium, and heavy. And oh look, the game gives a brief description of what it's best at doing, practically its role it plays on the battlefield. Speaking broadly, they're pretty self-explanatory. Light mechs are faster, so easier to get behind enemy lines, do some light flanking. Medium mechs are going to be the all-around bread and butter assault mechs, providing ample enough firepower to skirmish with and not die so quickly. And finally, your heavy mechs, the bullet sponges and forward frontliners taking all the brunt force of the enemy team. Not only that, but all mechs have an ability they can use, from giving a damage boost for 15 seconds, boost defense, remove weapon heat buildup, or even just transform into tank mode for the heavy mechs, providing even greater defense, and on top of that with added passives. There's just so much to cover in terms of the mechs themselves, as all of them excel in their broad roles, but achieve them slightly differently to keep it fresh and fun. For example, take the Berserker and Infiltrator, both light mechs with the role of picking off weak targets. However, they each have their own ways of approaching the task. The Berserker will rely on more of rushing down their weakest enemy, dealing high sustained damage with their ballistic barrage, boosting their damage, really getting in their face and unloading all their weapons, while the Infiltrator will use its cloak ability to pick out the weakest enemy or outright find ones that are alone to surprise attack. I personally gravitate towards the light mechs just for the speed alone. I like flying around the map, what can I say? I mostly dive in and die immediately. But that's besides the point, I'm having fun. Actually, back when I first played Hawken, you were given the Recruit as your starter mech, and I kept dying very easy, so at the first chance I bought the Brawler, and seeing as it was a heavy mech, I assumed I'd have a better chance at not dying so quickly, and actually get a kill for a change. Oh, was I wrong. I was very naive when it came to this game, and understanding that you have a better chance at winning if you stick with your team, or at least a buddy. Hawken is very team-oriented, and there's very little room to be able to take on a whole team and come out alive. By the time you start attacking, the whole hive is now alerted and coming down on you. The amount of damage you're able to dish out won't be able to deal with more than just one enemy, But of course, it's a different story if multiple enemies are already very low on health. Splash damage from an explosive weapon can deal with them easily. Besides that, the game constantly reminds you of the fact that, hey, you will most likely win if you stick with your team, as it'll help beginners understand they're not supposed to be alone in this. And if that wasn't all, you then have the component side of things to further tweak your playstyle. You can take equipment to help out your team, like scrambling the enemy's radar on an area, or EMP their weapons so they can't fire back for a short period. But if you thought this was free, then what kind of games have you been playing? A question that was brought up was how the economy side of the game would work, i.e. progression. In the original build of the game, you could buy meteor credits to buy your way to unlocking everything, or using Hawken credits that you'd amass from playing regular matches. And seeing that this is a free-to-play beta launch of the Hawken project with no functioning currency store for PC, the only way you'd be able to get new mechs, components, and weapons would be through Hawken credits. So the team decided to give every new account 75,000 credits to spend, which would be more than enough to get started and kit out a few mechs of your choice, so you're not left with just the recruit. However, they locked alternate primary weapon unlocks to the individual mechs' rank, so you couldn't, I'd assume, dominate pubs, give everyone a fair challenge. But at this point in the video, you're probably just screaming at me, well, how do I play it? That's if you haven't already skipped to this part of the video. And if you did, hi. I know what you've done. It's actually pretty simple to get started and get everything up and running. Firstly, you're going to want to go to the Hawken website I have linked below and follow the install guide. I mean, look, they even made it super simple and streamlined, which is another thing I gotta give props to the team. I've had experiences installing weird games and emulators where it almost turns into a scavenger hunt online to find these necessary files to make the game work. And every reference is out of date, so I have to go to forums and other shady websites, and now I may have a Trojan virus, but by now you should have the client and launcher downloaded. And the following launcher instructions is fairly easy. Just tell it where you extracted the client to, and it will find it and it will begin the injection process. Oh, and I forgot, you need to make an account on the website, which you will use to log in to the launcher and game. And here we are, back here again for the first time. Well, for you, I've already been playing for days. And what you will find on the home screen for Hawken is that, as I mentioned earlier, this is a beta launch of the Hawken project, meaning expect bugs and or issues. The Discord for the project specifically states this. They also mentioned they don't know how long the beta will last and when the 1.0 release of Hawken will be, as it has to do with how stable the beta will be. But so far, I haven't faced any issues and more than impressed with how the team at the Hawken project was able to succeed in reinstating Hawken's multiplayer. For those who don't know, Hawken was a multiplayer-oriented game with no story campaign. Most of the game's lore is actually scattered throughout descriptions and announcer dialogue in the game. Finally, coming back to this game and seeing it alive in the year of 2024, which was something I'd never expect to happen. It's just like how I remembered it. All the brief memories I've made back when I was completely overwhelmed and didn't understand what any of the menus really meant. From what I can tell, all the game modes are here, and if I'm missing anything, please let me know in the comments, as I don't really know everything about Hawken, as this is a specific build from 2014. Regardless though, I hope with this video I can convince you to try out the game if you haven't played or even heard about it. It's a real blast from the past. It was released back in 2012, during the time where all games had that piss filter, and Hawken is no different actually. However, there are some maps that deviate from this and actually have some color other than yellow. While being a war-driven world, Hawken has some aspects of nature sprinkled throughout its repertoire of maps, which is another reason as to why I love this game. World building. I like it. I don't know what else to say. But as I close out this video, I want to say thank you to the Hawken team for bringing back Hawken. All your hard work finally paid off. And I hope to see some new pilots out there.